type of Black Cormorant today. This is a great streamer pattern. I'm just using a sheer 14-aught thread that's black. Just getting an undercoat going here. I've got a size 10 streamer hook in my vise. Go ahead and cut that end off and make another pass up. Not too worried about coverage here, but I do want to keep about an eye length or so of space behind the eye. So really, it's a good looking fly too, and it's actually really straightforward and easy to tie. So if you're a beginner, this might be a really good one for you to start out with. So I want my tail to go in at about where the hook barb would be, which is right about there. I've mashed that barb down so you can't actually see that. So what you'll find with Peacock herl, this is the shaft of one of these peacock feathers, is the feathers that are the herls that are a little bit closer to the bottom are much longer in terms of how, not the length of the barbules, but more the length of the herl itself. And because I've got to travel so far on this hook, I want the longest herls that I can get, and I'll get them from the bottom rather than up near the eye. So once I've got those together, and I've cut off just a small tiny little bit of the tips here, not a lot, just a little bit. I'll draw those back a little. I'm going to actually use those to help us a little bit with bulk. This is just plain and simply not a bulky fly, regardless. It's a really streamlined and only a few materials. So what's most important to me right at this point is making sure I tie back to the point where I'm going to start wrapping this peacock herl up the shank of the hook. Because wherever I take that last wrap is where it's going to start. So I'm good right about there. I'm not going to crank down on it really hard because it'll cut right through that, those fibers. So we're going to be using a holographic tinsel on this to do a ribbing, and this is kind of an almost orange or amber color. So I've got my tinsel here. I'm just going to kind of put it on an angle there so I can secure it down with my thread. And once I've got that secured down, I'm going to go ahead and, similar to the peacock herls, I'm going to tie this back to where I want to start moving up the body of this fly. Which is going to be right about there. So because peacock herl does tend to want to break, one trick is to give yourself some extra thread length, and I'm just going to wind those 3 peacock herls around my thread. And that's going to do a couple of things for us. First and foremost, like I mentioned, peacock is very brittle, and so this will help keep that peacock herl from breaking as we start moving it up the shank of our hook. The other thing that's nice about this as well is if you've tied with peacock much, unless you're using just one strand, if you're using multiple strands of peacock, it will have a tendency to each individual herl to separate from the other. And this is just a really good way to keep all of that together all the way up the fly. And I'm not going to use my rotary. I'm just going to start right at the very back there. I'll reach in and kind of try to stroke these barbules back, and they're very tiny, and I don't want to go aggressively. They'll come right off of the peacock herl itself. But we're just going to kind of make our way up to behind the eye of the hook here. To about right there. I still have a little bit of a gap. So now that I've arrived there, I'm just going to go ahead and take a couple of thread turns over the top of those peacock curls just to secure them in place. Maybe take a thread wrap or two on the other side, which will do absolutely nothing other than clean it up a little bit. And then I will just shift my vise a little bit so I can get a better look at where those curls are, and I'm going to clip them right off with my scissors. I'm going to back my thread up just a little bit. I'll do a little bit of cleanup as well as we get closer to the end. But from here we're going to go ahead and transfer to our amber or orangish holo tinsel. And I'm going to want to have one nice wrap right at the butt of the hook there, kind of making it look like a hot spot. And then I'm going to take these wraps up to behind the eye of the hook, and I am keeping them fairly close to one another. And so basically what we're going to end up with is a really nice bright ribbing on this fly with the peacock curl kind of peeking up in between each one of these wraps. I'm telling you, when you're tying with a size 10, pack your lunch. Actually, they get much bigger than that as well, but sometimes it can take a little bit of extra time because you've got a lot of area to cover. So I'm just, at this point, taking a few wraps over the top of that tinsel, pull it backwards, take another couple wraps there. I'm going to go ahead and turn my vise a little bit so I can see where I've got that tinsel tied off, and we're going to just clip our tinsel free. I'll turn my vise right side up again. So we're going to finish the fly off with some marabou. This is just a piece of black marabou. I pulled already some of the fibers off of that feather, and we're going to use that as kind of a wing here. I'm going to go ahead and take my thread forward a wrap or two. And let's let that just kind of hang over the back end, probably 2 or 3 hook gaps in width. Spin our thread counterclockwise so it'll roll back towards us. I'll get a couple of nice tight wraps in place and then take a look and see if that's looking alright. And I'm thinking that that's looking alright, so I'm going to go ahead and take a few more wraps there. I'll lift up these butt ends and get a couple of wraps around the eye of the hook. From there I can come on in with my scissors and we're going to cut out those butt ends and make this thing look much better than it does right at the moment. I'm just going to hold on to the feather there just to make sure it stays on the top. And then I'm just going to start taking some wraps through that marabou here. We're going to make ourselves a little bit of a head. And this will compress that marabou down. Give this a little bit of a cleaner look. Nothing too excessive, but it's a big hook, so it can have a big head. Once I've got it about like that, I'm going to give myself a little bit of extra thread so I can grab my whip finisher. We'll finish off with a few few wraps. Have that nice and secured in place. Go ahead and take the back end of my whip finisher and we'll disconnect our thread. Now, the last thing that I'll do with this fly, and I don't do this with too many, I'm going to put on some varnish that's actually high gloss varnish. It just makes this fly look really nice. So I'm just going to get that, make sure I've got coverage all over the top there. And then I'm going to circle around as well and turn my vise upside down so that I can put a little dab of it there as well. And from there, I'm just going to hit the sides. A little bit on this side. And a little bit on this side. So with that done, there you have it. Great streamer pattern, the Black Cormorant. Not hard to tie in, a really good looking fly streamer that works well in the water, so give it a shot.